Hi there, I'm Roberto Padovani, and today I'm going to be talking about why we should all eat bugs. Before we get going, I'd just like to thank STEM Clubs for inviting me to speak today. 3 years ago, I founded Eat Bugs. Over the past 3 years, with Eat Bugs, I've toured all across the country and fed insects to thousands of people at science festivals. I fed insects to children, to families, to adults, to people from all walks of life and of all ages. So you may be wondering, why on earth am I subjecting all of these poor people to eating insects? Which, understandably, you might think sounds a little bit gross. Before we get going, let's just do a quick show of hands. So put your hand up now if you have ever eaten an insect. Alright, so I'm guessing probably almost none of you have ever eaten an insect. Let's do another show of hands now. Put your hand up now if you would ever eat an insect. Okay, so I'm hoping the second time there was a few more hands up, but I'm pretty sure probably a lot of you still wouldn't want to eat an insect ever. I'm hoping that over the next few slides I can convince you otherwise. So the world's population is increasing all the time, and that means that we need more food. It's predicted that by 2050 there are going to be 2 billion more people living on this planet. That's an increase of 1/4 compared to the current population today. To put that into perspective, 1/4 more people is the same as 120 times all of the people living in the United Kingdom today. That's a lot more people. How are we going to feed all these people? So we could just scale up the current agricultural systems that we have in place today. However, a lot of the foods that we eat commonly, such as pigs, cows, and chickens, are unsustainable, and that means they're bad for the planet. Over the next few slides, I'm going to be using the comparison of crickets versus cows to show you why crickets and why insects in general are much more sustainable and why they're much better for the planet. Farm animals need a lot of food to grow. To produce just a single kilogram of beef, you need 10 kilograms of animal feed. And that's because cows are quite bad at turning what you feed them into actually growing. In comparison, insects need to eat much less. So with the same amount of food, with 10 kilograms of food, you can produce 6 kilograms of crickets. That's 6 times as much as with the beef. On this planet, we have a limited amount of resources and a limited amount of space. So it makes much more sense to use those resources and to use that space to grow crickets, which are much better at turning what we feed them into actually growing. We also can't eat very much of most animals. So with 10 kilograms of beef, surprisingly, only 4 kilograms is edible. 6 kilograms of beef out of every 10 is inedible. That means we cannot digest it. And that's because we can't digest bones and we can't digest fur and skin. In comparison, we can actually digest almost all of an insect. If we have 10 kilograms of crickets, from those 10 kilograms, most of it's edible, so we can actually eat 8 kilograms of it. And when you compare that to the beef, that's a lot more than we can actually digest. Farm animals are also very thirsty, so to produce just one steak, that's 100 grams of beef, guess how much water we need? 2,000 litres of water. That's the same as 25 bathtubs. So that's all of the water that we need for the cow to drink during its lifetime, but also the water that's required to grow the crops that the cow can eat. In comparison, insects are much less thirsty. So to produce the same amount of crickets, so 100 grams of crickets compared to 100 grams of beef, we only need 1 litre of water. That's the same as just 2 small bottles of Coke. That's 2,000 times less water than the cows needed. On this planet, at any one time, there is a limited amount of available water. So that means it makes much more sense to grow crickets instead of cows so that we can save water and try and avoid drought situations where we run out of water. Raising farm animals also produces a lot of greenhouse gases. These are produced both by the animal as they grow but also by the entire manufacturing and farm processes that are involved. Greenhouse gases are bad because they contribute to climate change. There's a lot of nasty things that are associated with climate change, including rising sea levels, higher temperatures globally, and also unstable weather patterns. And these are all things that we really need to try and mitigate, try and avoid. Insects, in comparison, produce much fewer greenhouse gases. And if we look at crickets versus cows again, crickets produce 100 times fewer greenhouse gases than cows. So, if insects are so much better for the planet than traditional animals like cows, pigs, and chickens, why is no one eating insects? You might be wondering why your friends aren't doing it, why your family's not doing it, why your teachers aren't doing it. And that's simply because in the Western world, there is no cultural tradition of eating insects. However, that doesn't mean that a lot of people aren't eating them. Around the world, 2 billion people eat insects regularly. To put that in perspective, 2 billion people is 1/4 of the world's population. And in countries such as Ecuador, Nigeria, South Africa, Thailand, China, and Mexico, people eat insects every day. And that's just a very small selection of the many, many countries where insects are included in regular diets. So all of these people, they're eating insects because insects are good for the planet, but also insects are very healthy for you. So insects are full of protein, healthy fats like those found in fish, and also lots of vitamins and minerals. But most importantly, they actually taste delicious. So hopefully, over the past few slides, I've begun to convince you that insects are better for the planet than cows, pigs, chickens, but also that they're good for you. However, I do understand that you might be a bit skeptical, you might still not believe me, there might be some doubt that they taste good. That's why we're now going to take a very short break from the presentation, and you're going to be able to see some real people trying some insects.
Okay, so we've got some cricket Bombay mix here and some cricket flapjacks. And we've got Perrine, Martin and Tina. So put your hands up if you've ever tried an insect before.
Yes, I have. I can't wait.
And you guys haven't?
No,
right, so if you're a bit apprehensive, probably the best place to start is the flapjacks. So you can see in front of you you've got some flapjacks and you've got a bit of Bombay mix. So why don't you have a go at the flapjack first?
Right, okay.
That looks nice.
So it's just a flapjack with a couple crickets in there. You won't even know it's in there, really. You can see Tina's a little bit apprehensive.
That's good.
Just a flapjack, really, isn't it? Wouldn't really know there's much in there.
Could know the difference
Yeah.
from a normal flapjack. Not at all. Sweet.
Yep.
Yeah, wouldn't know the difference. I could eat that, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
It's okay. Yeah, I like
It's okay.
I think it's because it's hidden away
Yeah,
in the oats and the sugar, yeah.
yeah.
Really don't realise.
I'm going for it. I can see a bit of
Yeah, that's
insect.
nice.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to go for a bit of insect.
Do it, do it.
Shall I really do it?
Oh, the insect, all right.
Well, why don't you wait for the savoury one for the insect? Let's do it that way. So next, so that was the flapjack there, and now we've got the Bombay mix cricket. So that's just plain crickets with a bit of seasoning, bit of Bombay mix seasoning. So why don't you have a go at that one next? So I'd recommend have a few at once so you can really taste it. Just imagine it's sweets if you're a bit scared. There you go. It's literally just like crunchy sweets. Sorry, it's not sweets, like a crunchy snack.
You have to. They're delicious, actually.
There you go.
Yeah. That's
Just-
crunchy.
Oh, nice.
You have to get used to it.
What do you think it tastes like?
They are tasty. Crisps, crispy Bombay
okay,
mix
so, yeah.
or something.
Last night before dinner, yeah.
There we go. So, would you have that again, yeah?
I think because it's dry. It's a dry...
I have to get used
Yeah.
to the idea, but
So,
they're delicious.
yeah, so you would say eat insects to people? Try them out?
They're
Yeah,
delicious.
tasty. Yeah.
They're very tasty.
Great.
I'll certainly take some of that for lunch tomorrow.
There you go. Great. Well, thanks a lot.
I certainly
Cheers.
liked it. Thank you.
So I actually think that went pretty well. So it's normal to be a little bit scared before you try an insect for the first time. However, I would say just give it a go, and I promise you, you're probably going to like it. Make sure, though, that you don't just go into the garden, grab an insect and eat it. The insects that you eat need to be farmed for human consumption. So let's go over what we learned today. The world's population is increasing all the time. That means we need to produce more food. However, we can't just upscale the current methods of food production that we have because they're unsustainable. That means they're bad for the planet. Insects are more sustainable than farm animals because they need to eat much less. We can digest almost all of an insect. Insects don't need much water. And they also produce fewer greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change. Insects are very healthy for you. And 1/4 of the world's population, that's 2 billion people, eats them regularly as part of their everyday diets. So I'm hoping many of you might have changed your minds now about whether you would eat an insect. Let's do a quick show of hands now if you would try an insect. Alright, so hopefully compared to 10 minutes ago, there was a lot more hands up this time. So if you want to try some insects, there's a couple links where you can convince your parents to maybe get you some insects to try for your tea. And there's a link to some further reading. So some of the materials within that might be quite complicated, but if you liked what you heard today, let your teachers know and they can go on that link and maybe design a lesson or come up with some kind of activity around it. Thanks a lot for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. Go eat some bugs.